big. Stephen Miles doesn't worry about spending up big with this big hydro pump project he's got there. It's been revealed that could balloon out to $18 billion. And when faced by angry residents this week at a community meeting, that happened in Mackay this week, he couldn't say exactly what the taxpayers would be stumping up for the build, how much it was. I mean, that thing's out of control. That's like the suburban rail loop in Melbourne.
Well, it is. Well, it is. And I mean, I'm just plugging it back into our previous sort of comments the last few minutes. This is the issue. You know, 19 billion is getting on to a third of the state's budget, you know, at least 20 to 25% anyway, in one go. You know, the yearly budget of the state of Queensland. This is a preposterous project. It's up west of Mackay on the Pioneer River in a pristine valley, you know, abutting, well, right up to a national park. I'm sure there'll be land within the edges of the national park to be flooded. There will be endangered species. And if I can tell you one thing about Australia today, if there's any sort of endangered species, it doesn't happen due to the terrible environmental law we have nationally. Look what happened with the Port of Hastings down for these wind farm projects. There is no way that the Federal Environment Minister will ultimately allow this to go ahead. So it was crazy in the beginning. The price is crazy. And then you contrast that with federal Labor saying that, oh, nuclear doesn't stack up. Well, I can tell you now, you could get quite a few small modular nuclear reactors for $19 million that would actually be, you know, permanent baseload power 24/7, and you know, if you believe in this sort of carbon cult, it would be clean energy as well.
We seem to have an inability, I think, you know, talking in general in this country, to come up with nation-building projects. I mean, we always refer back to the Snowy River Scheme. Well, for God's sake, the Snowy River Scheme was built in the 1960s. We still refer back to that as the gold standard of nation-building projects. We've even got the Inland Rail now that Anthony Albanese is refusing to guarantee. It's a $31 billion project. That would make it to Queensland. I mean, this is needed to move freight between Victoria and Queensland. Instead, they're now saying, oh, Barnaby Joyce, he's the only one that's ever done anything about this. He's done a horrible job. Have a listen to this.
This bloke was the infrastructure minister for a decade almost. Inland Rail was the one project he talked about, and frankly, it still didn't have a route to the port, any port at all. In Brisbane, in Gladstone, in Melbourne, this is a mess that the coalition left with unfunded, unplanned thought bubbles.
Look, if you and I had more hair, we'd be tearing it out over these things. And for God's sake, can't we have bipartisanship on major Australian infrastructure projects that help the country?
Look, one of the things I think that all politicians seem to misunderstand these days, and I say this from the standpoint, Steve, of someone who built major infrastructure in Brisbane. We built a number of significant tunnel projects which normally would be built by a state government in the other states. So I'm talking with that experience. And the reason we got it done is we had capable senior bureaucrats who had the total support of the political leadership in the council that I ran, and that we worked hard then with the then Beattie government, with their political support, to clear the logjams, to get rid of bureaucracy, to push the projects forward. You can't give them to bureaucrats and have it done on remote control. And, you know, whenever I hear politicians say, I'm going to give it to an independent authority and it'll be hunky-dory, it won't happen. You know, my message this evening is I think the Prime Minister's right that, and I hate to say this as well, line up with him again, second time this evening with a Labor politician, but he's right that this wasn't driven by the coalition. But I say to him, well, you've now been in charge for 2 years. You have to drive it. It is a nation-building project. It is vitally important. At least make a commitment to get the railway line to a new freight hub just to the west of Toowoomba. That would be very, very important. And then you can decide whether you go to the Port of Gladstone ultimately, or you somehow try and get down the range to the Port of Brisbane. But look, it has to be driven. And I hope they'll stop the sort of the point scoring and get on and drive it.
Yeah, well said. Always great to catch up with you, Cam.